8:30 to 10 o'clock. Anthropic built a model called Claude Mythos Preview, and then made a strange choice. They did not release it to the public. Not because it was weak, because Anthropic says it was too capable at finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities. Then they gave it to a control group of major companies and critical software maintainers through Project Glasswing. And the result was not a few bug reports. Anthropic says the project has already found more than 10,000 high or critical severity security flaws. So today we are breaking down what Mythos is, why Project Glasswing matters, and the uncomfortable question underneath all of this. What happens when an AI can find security flaws faster than humans can safely fix them? Claude Mythos Preview is an unreleased frontier model from Anthropic. The important part is not just that it writes code well. Anthropic describes it as a general-purpose model with unusually strong cyber capabilities. In the Project Glasswing launch, Anthropic said Mythos had reached a level of coding capability where it can surpass all but the most skilled humans at finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities. That phrase matters: finding and exploiting. A normal scanner might flag suspicious code. A good human researcher asks whether the bug can actually be reached from outside the system, whether it can be chained with other bugs, and whether it can be proven. According to Cloudflare, that is where Mythos looked different. Cloudflare said Mythos was better at building exploit chains and generating proof that a suspected bug was real. We are not going into exploit mechanics in this video. The point is higher level. The model was not just spotting possible issues. It was helping close the gap between suspicion and proof. Anthropic's response was Project Glasswing. On April 7, 2026, Anthropic announced a controlled security initiative with partners including AWS, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan Chase, the Linux Foundation, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Palo Alto Networks. The idea was simple: if models like Mythos are going to exist, defenders need a head start. Anthropic committed up to $100 million in usage credits for Mythos Preview and $4 million in direct donations to open-source security organizations. That is the part most people miss. This is not only a model story. It is an ecosystem story. Open-source maintainers already deal with limited time, old code, dependency chains, and a flood of low-quality AI-generated bug reports. Now imagine adding a model that can surface thousands of plausible vulnerabilities across critical projects. That is useful. It is also overwhelming. The numbers are what pushed this from interesting to urgent. In Anthropic's May update, it said roughly 50 Project Glasswing partners had found more than 10,000 high or critical severity vulnerabilities. Anthropic also said it scanned more than 1,000 open-source projects. Mythos estimated 6,202 high or critical severity vulnerabilities out of 23,019 total findings. Then came the important quality check. Of 1,752 high or critical rated findings assessed by security firms or Anthropic, 90.6% were valid true positives. 62.4% were confirmed as high or critical severity. That does not mean every finding is perfect. It means the output was serious enough that the human bottleneck moved downstream. Finding bugs used to be the constraint. Now the constraint is triage, disclosure, patch design, regression testing, deployment, and getting users to update. Anthropic says the average high or critical severity bug found by Mythos takes 2 weeks to patch. That is the central tension of this whole story. Cloudflare's write-up is one of the most useful first-hand accounts because it cuts through the hype. They tested Mythos on more than 50 repositories and said it was a real step forward. But their biggest lesson was not just point an AI at your codebase and let it cook. It was the opposite. Cloudflare said pointing a generic coding agent at a repository produces findings, but not meaningful coverage at scale. What worked was a harness. Narrow questions. Adversarial review. Separate agents for separate reasoning steps. Parallel narrow scans. Deduplication. Human vulnerability management around the model. That is the future-shaped lesson. The winning security team is not the one with one magic chatbot. It is the team that turns a .ai into a controlled pipeline. Map the system, narrow the task, hunt for a class of bug, validate independently, dedupe, report, patch, test, deploy. In other words, the model matters, but the process around the model may matter even more. On June 2nd, Anthropic expanded Project Glasswing to about 150 new organizations. Anthropic said the expansion followed work with existing partners, the security industry, open-source maintainers, and the US government. It also said new organizations need to meet security requirements before access. That tells us 2 things. First, demand is real. Critical infrastructure operators, maintainers, and security teams want access to this capability. Second, Anthropic still does not think ordinary public release is safe enough. Anthropic says Mythos-class models could exist at other AI companies within 6 to 12 months. It also says hundreds of thousands of organizations, researchers, and maintainers may need access to advanced cyber tools. That is the dilemma. If access is too restricted, defenders fall behind. If access is too open, attackers get the same acceleration. My take is that Mythos is a threshold story, not a product review. The obvious question is, when can I use it? The better question is, what changes when this class of capability becomes normal? Security teams will need shorter patch cycles. Software vendors will need better disclosure processes. Open source maintainers will need support, not just more bug reports. Enterprises will need AI validation loops before they trust AI generated fixes. And developers need to understand that AI assisted attackers do not need perfect models. They need cheap, patient, tireless models that can scan, test, retry, and chain small mistakes together. That is what makes this different. Not one cinematic superhack. So the real Mythos story is not that Anthropic built a scary model. It is that cybersecurity is entering the agent era. The defenders who win will not just use AI. They will build systems around AI that can verify, patch, and deploy faster than attackers can exploit. If you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe to AI Unchained. I cover AI agents, frontier models, crypto infrastructure, and the systems that sit underneath the headlines. Educational content only, not financial advice, and in this case, definitely not cybersecurity instructions.